Okay, lastly, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about your leadership practices and inventory results. This was intended for a number of different reasons. The first of which is, probably the most important of which is to inspire you to think about what leadership means. Because a lot of people can talk colloquially about leadership, but they don't really know how to distinguish it from management. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in class, but the biggest distinguishing feature of leadership is that it's really about managing or leading people through times of change. And that change starts with you or somebody being able to buck the status quo in looking through the environment for opportunities, new opportunities, or looking at what exists now and saying, we can't do this. And then inspiring a new shared vision for everybody and then motivating them around it. So this is, again, a chance to see what leadership really is. The leadership practice is an inventory. That is, the 5 dimensions or practices of leadership are based on research done by some gentleman who subsequently wrote a best-selling book about leadership called The Leadership Challenge, if you ever want to purchase the book. In addition, I wanted to give you a chance to be evaluated by someone who knows you on your leadership. And you might have found that depending on who you chose, the perfect was perfectly able to evaluate your leadership ability. And in some cases, maybe they didn't have enough data to go on. And that's totally okay. This is really to get you to be thinking, who am I as a leader in terms of my competencies and how can I grow? And then lastly, in thinking about building a leadership team more genuine, more on a basic level, you want to think when you get together about what each person brings to the table. And given you will be working within your group throughout the semester, you want to get a sense, who are these folks on your leadership team with you in building this hypothetical business, and what do they bring to the table? Now, in terms of why this happens. All right. These are the 5 practices and 10 commitments of leadership. And you can see here are the 5 practices, starting with modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. And here, I'm sorry you can't see the last one down here, but I will post these slides for you. Are 10 commitments of leadership identified by the gentleman who wrote this book. Their names are Kouzes and Posner. I want to say it's Kouzes and Posner, Posner. And they start their book with the idea of modeling the way. And that starts with you figuring out who you are, the principles that you value the most in leadership, and what values you think want to drive you. And then being a role model of those. And then is this idea of having to have a shared vision. So again, this provokes your thinking about, what is a vision? What should it look like? And how can I inspire people around that? And to be sure, in 360-degree feedback, the dimension that's considered most relevant to leadership by people is this inspired the shared vision. That people who are visionaries tend to be, or having a vision is the most important component of leadership, according to people. So envision the future by enlisting others, and enlisting others in a common vision, challenging the process, which frankly often precedes the inspiring a shared vision, is to be able to look for opportunities to be innovative and experiment and take risks in the process. Enabling others to act has to do with making sure that the people around you are fully capable and empowered to do what they need to do and are able to collaborate with other people. And then lastly is encouraging the heart, and that really has to do with recognizing people for their contributions and celebrating the wins that you have together. What you're going to be doing in your group is in your leadership team is you're going to be discussing your highest 2 scores along the dimensions based on the feedback that you're getting from the other person, as well as your lowest. So do you tend to be the highest on inspiring a shared vision and lowest on challenging the process? Where are you in that? And in class, I'm going to give the 2 teams, I'm going to divvy up the 5 dimensions, and I'm going to ask that each team develop a presentation offering specific strategies to implement to improve upon these dimensions. And I think what it'll do is really add some specific detail about what you do with this information, because there are a lot of things that you can do on a relatively small level that can heighten your leadership behaviors and practice and the way that people perceive you. So I'm going to ask that you look at these. I recommend that you bring your survey results in specifically printed out so that you can see what the items are associated with each of the practices, because that's going to help you think about specific strategies to improve upon your leadership in that particular dimension. That is all for the presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing you all next Monday.